Hello and welcome to this episode of Nutrition Education of Vermont. I am your Channel 17 host, Kim Villemaire. I'm here today with Prince to talk about brain food. Now, Prince, you have done a vast amount of work in community wellness. You have worked 4 years for the Women, Infant, and Children WIC program in the Virginia Department of Health. You have a bachelor's in dietetics and a master's in counseling and education, and you are pursuing your dietetics license. So, brain food. What are your thoughts and experience with all this work you've been doing on what we should eat in order to have healthy, happy brains?
Well, in my experience of counseling and doing research on what we should be eating, first, I've realized that the body depends on more oxygen by the food that we eat. So first off, the air that we're breathing, most of it is nitrogen, a little bit of oxygen and carbon, very small amounts of carbon dioxide. And so the body really isn't receiving much oxygen as we think it is. The body depends on more oxygen by the food that we eat. And so the oxygen is what makes the food alive. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so consuming living foods, consuming fresh fruits and vegetables that is alive by, if we're cooking it, to not cook it so long because it's killing a lot of the nutrients and it's taking away the oxygen that is fueling our cells. Mm-hmm. And so the basics to it is to eat fresh fruits and vegetables, just as most nutritionists have been saying, but to really explain to people that it is the oxygen within the foods, the living that living component that is giving our body energy. Mm-hmm. And so the slide here states the composition of the atmosphere, explaining the nitrogen, the oxygen, and the carbon dioxide. And the next slide is a infographic just explaining the brain loving the amount of oxygen we consume. Mm. And so the brain really takes up mostly 20% of whatever we consume. Mm. And the foods on the right of the slide of the brain shows, except for the dark chocolate, but but we do need sugar, but it's the fact that we consume too much sugar. That's the problem. Everything does convert over to sugar, but we want a slow release of it. So really we want to just, like I said, focus on foods that's living, focus on foods that is growing in our environment, fresh produce. That is really what's going to give the body more energy. The body is electric, you know, the brain is electric. The moment you wake up, that power that your brain has it's able to light a light bulb, you know. Mm-hmm. So that's my perspective on, first, what should we be eating? That's the basics of it.
And by fresh foods, that's in large part seasonal. It's in large part local. Obviously, things grown far away are deteriorating on their way here. So the closer to straight off the stalk that you can eat, the better.
Yep, definitely, yeah. That's the business strategies of the produce section in grocery stores. I'm not mad at them. You know, they have to make money. But it would be better for us to get our food from the farmer's market because we're eating what's growing around us. We're closest to nature. Everything we want to do, we want to be closest to nature. Mm-hmm. And so the moment you pick food right from the ground or from the tree, within 4 hours, or depending on how you store the food, it starts to decay. And so the trick of the grocery stores is they'll ship foods that's unripened. They'll pick foods before it's ripe so that when it gets to the grocery store that it's ripe. But if you pick it ripe and then ship it, it will be delivered rotten. And so the food that we eat, you know, we're not so sure if it's decaying or if it's ripened. You get what I'm saying? And so definitely the farmers markets, definitely. That's where the nutrient-dense foods are. And that's all we're supposed to do by nature, eat the foods that's growing in season. In October, when the pumpkins it's not just for Halloween, that's what we're supposed to eat. And sweet potatoes and these starch foods, you know, we don't want to consume so much of it because it's a lot of sugar, but these foods are sustaining us in the climate that we're in. It's getting cold, the body's shivering, so it needs more sugar from these starches to sustain us in this environment. Summertime comes, it's hot, you're sweating, you're getting dehydrated, so nature will provide you with fruits. These foods contain more of the water to keep you hydrated. And so definitely we want to eat these foods. This is explanation to show how we should eat the foods in season, right? Why we should eat the foods in season. And really, it's in moderation. We want to fulfill the colors. So, you know, if it's green, you know, you want to go for the dark green. The reason why I say that the color matters is because in going to the produce section, if I'm looking at lime and I'm picking lime, I'm going to be looking at the lime that has the darkest pigmentation. I want to go for the darkest green. Why? Because it absorbs more sunlight.
Oh, okay.
See, the thing is, food is just a transformation of sunlight. See, so the sun really provides all that comes from the land. Everything comes from land, but the sun is what nourishes the land to give us what we want. And so if you're picking produce, you're looking, even if you turn a watermelon, you look on the bottom of it, you see it's pale because the sun was not able to reach there. So you always want to look for what has the darkest color, whether it's strawberries, you want the darkest red to it, the lime, you want the darkest green to it, because it's going to have more of the nutrients because it's just sunlight that it's absorbing, right?
Although I know with strawberry picking myself, sometimes when you get too dark, it's like, oh, that's partially vinegar.
Yeah, so definitely. Besides that, like I said, the body depends on more oxygen by the food that you eat. If we're eating living foods, it's something I call hope. It comes with hormones, oxygen, phytonutrients, and enzymes. Everything is living. We want to eat foods that add to us, that supplement us, not foods that take away. So the foods that will be taken away is the processed foods. You know, we're eating too much meat. The real issue with meat is two things. It's the animals are not eating what they're supposed to. And then we're not chewing it well. So these things, you know, the chewing of your food well until it's liquid, people really don't talk about these things because you're really not going to make much money from it. You know, if I'm telling you chew your food, what money am I going to make from that? So everybody's it's mostly marketers that are the health advocates because they're selling something. Definitely. So the next slide goes into more detail explaining the oxygen needing, the cells needing oxygen to fuel the tissues within us. And it goes into detail explaining the electrons in your lungs, but like I said, it's all about oxygen. The next slide is a scientific approach to explain cellular respiration. And that's just how the oxygen fuels our cells. And this is just the beginning of this nutrition education for Vermont, so there's going to be more series. So for this, I'll go more in depth in explaining the process of cellular respiration through Krebs cycle and glycolysis and all that. But this is just something to put out there. Overall, the scientist that done a very well job, he even won a Nobel Peace Prize explaining cancer. And this is fact. I mean, it's sad that we really we don't have knowledge on wonderful scientists that have done research, extensive research to explain that the cancer cells, you know, they grow very well in acidic environment. Basically, it's not much oxygen. If there's
it's anaerobic environment.
Exactly, yes. And so cancer would do well if there's not much oxygen within the body. So it's just like your trash can. You tie your trash can, there's not oxygen in there, you'll see that there's more bacteria growing within there. Oxygen is the most important thing to the human body. We know that. And so our diet, really, we're slowly choking ourselves because we're taking away the oxygen. We're producing more carbon dioxide with the diet that we're consuming. But if we're consuming foods that's living, that have this oxygen, then we won't be choking ourselves. We'll be getting more oxygen. So these things such as exercise and running, this makes you take in more oxygen when you're breathing heavy, you see? This is the reason why it's important to go outside for a walk. You want more oxygen. We're always indoors, and we're slowly choking ourselves by the lifestyle that we live. And this is why we're stressed out, really. I mean, think about it. Somebody's choking you, you're gonna be, let it go. And that's the lifestyle we live, where we're slowly choking ourselves by the diet that we eat. Definitely. And so Dr. Otto Warburg, I like his study explaining the things that help cancer growth. And that he states that the lack of oxygen. Green juice is one of the greatest meal. I could say a meal because it's really just taking the blood within the green leafy vegetables, and it's very rich in oxygen. Saturates your body in oxygen, definitely. So those are one of the things.
If anyone was interested in learning more about his research and what oxygen has meant in cancer research, where might they go to find that?
Well, you have to be watchful of what you go on, what you see on the internet. The first thing I'm going to say is Google, but you want to make sure that it's peer-reviewed articles and it's legitimate information from his research. But definitely, the internet has the information to state what he stated about cancer growth in an acidic environment. And now that there's a lot more information, social media and internet, everybody is becoming aware, everybody's conscious of what we're supposed to eat. But like I said, marketers are definitely doing a good job. Lobbyists are doing a good job in selling their products rather than focusing on really what the body needs. And so the point I'm getting to is that the diet that we should be consuming is just that what nature has provided by the foods that are growing in season, and to focus on oxygen. Yes. All right. And so the last slide here, fresh foods contain much more oxygen than processed foods. The additional oxygen makes the metabolic/digestive process easier. It's much easier to digest foods that's living. Why? Because I said hormones, oxygen, phytonutrients, enzymes. Enzymes, this is chemical reaction that helps break down food. It comes within the food. So it adds on to the pancreas, it adds on to our enzyme bank. The foods we eat that's processed and dead, they do contain some minerals, but they do rob from our bank of enzymes, you see? And so this also, the aging process is done by the loss of enzymes as well. Enzymes are very important. They help break down food. And so when we're eating foods that are living, you're drinking green juice, these things give the body enzymes, which makes it easier to digest the food, you see? All we have to do is focus on chewing. See, 32 times for each tooth, right?
So all these fresh foods, they have all these enzymes already on them or in them, and when you eat them, it's like they're already there, waiting, ready to help you digest
Nature just wants to add on to us. Now, if we're cooking our food, I'm not against cooking food. You know, now everybody's becoming a vegan, and the point I'm getting, there's a lot of fad diets going on. As I stated earlier, we don't want to cook too long. If you have a stew that you're making and the spinach is the last thing that you're placing in, my family's from Ghana, West Africa, and so we're gonna start cooking. The Mauhi African Market is the family business that we have, and we're gonna start cooking soon. This is the reason why I want to do these presentations, to explain what we're preparing are nutrient-dense foods. And so these meals, when we cook the soup or stew, whatever it is, the last thing we put in there is the vegetation. We turn the stove off, you see? And so this is able to kill the bacteria, but it's not gonna kill the nutrients, you see? So steaming your vegetables is wonderful, right? 5 to 6 servings of fruits and vegetables. Start off in the morning with your fruits. This is wonderful. Why? Because first off, you wanna start off in the morning with water to help cleanse the digestive system. I call it the internal bath. So I start off with tea. I start off with just hot water. I squeeze some lime, drink that separate, get my tea or my hot water. This is my internal shower to cleanse the digestive system and to really remove the foods that I ate yesterday. You see, my morning, the morning focus everybody should focus on for your breakfast is to eliminate the foods that you eat the day before, so that you're welcoming lunch and dinner into a new environment. It's so that the digestive system can focus more on lunch and dinner and not have to really focus on what you ate yesterday. And so definitely breakfast, we want to focus on fruits and water first thing in the morning. The fiber within the fruits is the broom for your intestines. Now there's roughage, broccoli, and kale, those things, that comes into play for lunch. So further on in the series, I'll explain lunch and dinner and the types of foods that will help the digestive system. But back again, it's eating foods fresh, right? Making sure they're clean, and there is proper ways to store them. And I'll explain that further on in the series, the temperatures and the time that food has for room temperature to avoid bacteria. But also the E. coli within food, you know, it's also the fact that we lack probiotics, the good bacteria. We lack the good bacteria. And the start off with good bacteria is breastfeeding. When working with WIC, that's the number one thing we're promoting is breastfeeding. I'm a very big advocate for breastfeeding, and like I said, marketers and sales are really taking over what nature has provided. And that is a good way to capitalize on making money, is to take away what nature has provided. You see, if breast milk is free, it's always with you, it's always ready. But baby formula companies were really enforce the convenience of their formula. So people will be hypnotized and thinking, oh, the formula is more convenient for me. All creatures love convenience. But breast milk is always wet, it's custom made, it has different, I mean, the different foods you have will give it, the baby, different flavors. And then I have a theory, a wonderful theory, that babies drinking breast milk are taught to work for what they want. Because a bottle will automatically bring the milk out. Gravity will bring the milk out of the bottle. But the baby would have to suck the milk out of the breast. So this teaches the baby to work for what they want. Besides that, the muscles of the mouth get stronger. I mean, nature definitely has a play into the growth development. So the baby's speech gets better. You see, the baby is prepared to speak.
And more ready to start chewing
definitely,
solid foods
definitely.
when the time
Oh
comes.
yeah, even crawling strengthens the hands of the baby and helps the baby with handwriting skills, the motor skills, definitely. Oh yeah. So we're too away from nature. That's the problem, is that we're distancing ourselves from nature and allowing corporations to really tell us what to eat. And so we have to focus on, definitely, we have to get back to nature, eat foods closest to nature. Brown rice instead of white rice, definitely.
And like half of that's foods, but if we're talking about back to nature, exercise is a big part of that.
Of course,
so I know you had more to say on that.
Yes,
so.
exercise, my saying is exercise and dieting is two wheels on a bicycle. They both have to go the same direction. And doing what you love too, your attitude, being optimistic, that is also a big part to play within it. And I have that discussion, I have that set up for the later on series. But definitely exercise. I suggest to exercise in the morning, the first thing in the morning. Why? It gives you more energy throughout the day. It's just to start off walking, and you'll notice that the days that you don't walk, you feel tired or you're just not thinking right. So there's a video that I have explaining exercising and how wonderful it is for the brain and the wonderful benefits that the research has shown what exercising can do for the brain. Besides that, I'm a fan of the Mediterranean diet. I've done the vegan diet and I've lost a lot of weight, and I even did bodybuilding from my vegan diet. Although I'm more focused on, I like to be a little fit myself. So I do like to eat fish and eggs. And so I like studying the Egyptians as well. The Egyptians, you know, civilization began in Egypt, and they had a lot of things figured out. I mean, they had everything figured out. So we're just studying what they taught. I mean, I have figured out math, everything. And so they really were focused on Mediterranean diet, the good fat. The brain is made out of 60% fat. And so I like to eat foods that have good fat, not the saturated or trans fats. This is just olive oil, fish, nuts. These foods are very good for the brain. And that's number one thing I'm focused on, is nourishing the brain, and the body will take care of itself. As Thomas Edison said, the chief mechanism of the body is to support the brain. So,
should we watch that video?
Definitely, yes.
Okay.
Let's watch this video, and that's the end of this show. And stay tuned for the next series of Nutrition Education for Vermont.
Is exercise good for my brain? We've all bought a gym membership we never used. It's what New Year's resolutions are for. But you might be a little less shy of the treadmill if you knew working out didn't just tone your bum, but your brain. Here's how. Your brain makes up just 2% of your body weight, but it's very greedy, sucking up 1/5 of the oxygen you take in. When you start exercising, blood flows to your brain, carrying extra oxygen and nutrients to your neurons. It seems your brain is poised to take advantage of this feast. Scientists think that the increase in oxygen may help stimulate the production of new nerve cells in the hippocampus, known as neurogenesis. And as neurons are responsible for perception, memory, and everything else in the brain, increasing their number is like building your money reserve for a rainy day, when your brain is damaged from disease or loses nerve cells as it ages. These extra neurons add up and become part of what scientists have coined brain reserve. And that's not all. Researchers are finding that exercise may also help your brain, even after it's become damaged. One study put a group of 70 to 80-year-old women with mild cognitive impairment through a 6-month boot camp, pumping iron 2 days a week. At the end of it, researchers measured not muscles, but their brain's processing speed, and the ladies showed a clear improvement. So, exercise can be good for your brain as well as your body. And best of all, you don't need to pump iron. A little light gardening or a half-hour walk through the park will do just as well. To learn how you can get your brain pumped up, go to www.hellobrain.eu.